scripture in the Bible. I want to preach about what we call the prodigal son. Maybe this shoe may fit somebody other than me in the room today. It's found in the Gospel of Luke, the 15th chapter, beginning in the 11th verse and going down through the 24th verse. Luke chapter 15, verse 11 through 24. We read these words. Jesus is telling a parable, a story with a spiritual meaning. He said a certain man had two sons, and the youngest son said to the father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that belongs to me in inheritance." And the father divided his goods and gave him his inheritance. And not many days after that, the young son got it all together. He sold everything and got cash. And he took off on a journey into a far country. And when he got there, he wasted his substance with riotous or ungodly living. And then when he had spent all he had took from his father, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and then he began to be in want after he had spent everything. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, or got a job. And the citizen sent him into the fields to feed hogs. And the boy was so hungry he would have ate what the hogs was eating, the corn husks. And no man in his condition gave him anything. And when he came to himself in a hog pen, he said, "Now how many servants of my father got plenty bread and some left over? And here I am in a hog pen, starving with hunger. I will arise and go back to my father. And I will say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But just make me one of your hired servants." And he arose. He headed back to his father, but while he was a yet way off, still walking, his father saw him coming. And the father had compassion on the boy and ran down the road to meet him and wrapped his arms around his neck and kissed his boy. And the son said, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. I've spent all your money. I've wasted everything you taught me." But the father said to his servants, "Bring out the best robe I got. Put it on him. And put a ring on his hand, a signet ring." They didn't have checkbooks, but if you had money, you had a ring that you could just stamp it. He said, "Put one of those rings on my broke son's finger. And put some shoes on his feet. And go get that big fat calf we've been fattening up and kill it. And we're going to cook it and eat and have a good time. This my son was dead, but he's alive again. He was lost, and now he's found." And they had a party. I want to use for a subject, grace changes everything. Grace. Grace changes everything. This parable told by Christ, Jesus, thank God that Luke recorded it. I believe that it is the greatest story. And I quote Charles Dickens, who wrote Ebenezer Scrooge and all of those great stories. He said, Someone once asked him, what's the greatest story you've ever read that somebody else wrote? And he said, the prodigal son. Because this story contains every aspect of human nature that we could think of. Family situations, child making wrong mistakes, a father having forgiveness capacity, how going out with money or fooling his money or soon departed. Everything is in this parable. In Mark 4, chapter 33, 34, verse 33, 34, Mark records that Jesus spoke to people always when he taught them in parables, as they were able to hear. And Mark said that without using a parable, he did not even teach. And then when he was alone with his disciples, he expounded the parable to them. What is a parable? I remember when Zoom came out, when COVID first hit, everybody was saying, Reb, you got to get on Zoom. We got to have Bible study on Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom. I thought Zoom was a song by the Commodores or something. Like, Zoom, you want some Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. So what I did, I went down to Office Depot at that time, and they had these yellow books that somebody had did a copyright on when DOS, digital operating systems, first came out for computers. A guy who didn't know nothing about it, he researched how to understand it without going to college, and he wrote a yellow book. You've probably seen them cover everything now. It was called Computers for Dummies. Well, I went and bought a book called Zoom for Dummies. And while I was in that section, they had a book, Stock Investing for Dummies, Choosing a College for Dummies, Learning to Play Chess for Dummies. And what these books do, they take something very complicated and break it down to where even a dummy like me can understand it. That's what a parable is. I think that's what Jesus was doing. I call the parables of Jesus theology for dummies. You know, theology is the study of God. So without going to seminary, without spending a lifetime in the church, these parables are the teachings of Jesus. It shows us a high definition picture of what God is like. Theology for dummies. A story is a parable that doesn't actually tell you God is in it. It doesn't even name him in the story, but if you read the story, even without naming him, it reveals that God is all in it. Basic truths, a parable, a basic truth about life. You know, two people were standing in the checkout line at Walmart. Something gets everybody's attention because you've been there. That's what the parable did. Common things in life that everybody can understand and relate to, but it reveals a divine truth. A farmer, some of his parables, a farmer sowing seed. A man who accidentally finds a diamond of great worth and go sell everything to buy the field to get the diamond. A woman who loses some money in her house. She sweeps and moves furniture around. A shepherd who realizes one of his sheep is missing, and he leaves the 99 to go look for that one. Another parable, a landowner who goes on a trip and leaves his workers in charge. Parables. That's what we're dealing with today, a parable. Jesus told a parable. A father had two sons, surrounded with people that he was teaching. All of them knew about having children, about having sons, and knowing about the traditions of a father and a son, how a son has a rightful share of his father's wealth at birth. In that tradition, if you had a baby, you're going to take care of it. A son was born. The first son got a double portion. The next son got a third portion, 2/3. Got 1/3. The oldest son got 2/3. And the more children it was, each one got a part, except for the firstborn. He always got double. So when he tells this story, everybody perks up. They know where he's going with this. He said a father had two sons, and the youngest son said, Father, give me mine. Give me mine now. Give me my inheritance that I have being your son. Basically saying, I can't wait till you die. I need my money now, man. I know you got it. I got places to go and people to see. And the father, without even discussion, gave it to him. That's a whole nother sermon. Sometimes if you want to prove if somebody really loves you, you got to let them go. Sometimes you got to let your children go. Sometimes the world can teach them better than you can in the house. The son said, give me mine. The father gave him his share of cattle and sheep or camels, whatever he owned. He gave it to the son. The son still living in the house. And the Bible said soon thereafter, soon as he got it, he went and sold it to get the cash. Soon thereafter. That struck out to me. Soon thereafter. It amazes to me how sin has a way to make people move a lot faster. When you get ready to sin, you be moving. When you're supposed to meet somebody to sin, you be moving. You ain't got time to talk, you moving. It could be nighttime, but you moving. Those on their way to do evil move quickly. Kind of remind me of that cartoon I used to watch, The Road Runner. Can I get in a witness from 84? The Road Runner dealing with Wile E. Coyote. Wile E. Coyote wanted to do evil to the Road Runner, and boy, he was a busy coyote. He was ordering things from Acme, and he would set up paint pictures on the rocks like it looked like a tongue, so the Road Runner would go through it. He was always up to something. I had to look up the Road Runner. The Road Runner is a ground cuckoo bird. In other words, he can run faster than he can fly. And that coyote was at him, never did eat him. But that Wile E. Coyote was quick. He was always thinking of something late at night, working around the clock. And that's what sin does. When Satan dashes and tempts you with temptation, it's like a fisherman. When you put your lure on the hook and you throw it out there and dangle it. And we are like the fish. And Satan puts the temptation on the hook. And then once you bite the temptation, you don't realize there's a hook in the temptation until it's too late. And Satan will pull you in just like a trout that swallowed the bait on a fisherman's line. Quick. That boy got that money, and Satan began to put in his minds about the women and the prostitutes and the gambling and the drinking that was going on in a place called the far country. And he could no longer be comfortable in his father's house. That, like the old folks said, that money was burning a hole in his pocket. Oh, don't look at me like you ain't been there. You know what that payday check did for you when you was 22 years old. I'll meet up with you as soon as I cash my check. And you already got things in your mind of what you're going to do and what drink you're going to order and what club you're going to go to. Here it says that he went with the money to a place called the far country. It's amazing that Jesus doesn't name the country. Jesus knew all the countries. He knew about Galilee, Jerusalem, Samaria, Lebanon, the hills of Judea. But he just calls it, it's a parable. The far country can be anywhere. And I wondered where it was, so I said, Alexa, where's the far country? And Alexa said, Reverend Holt, it's a place where you go just far enough where you don't have to obey God's will. It's a place where you can go where you can lie, fornicate, skip church, steal, get drunk up, spend your paycheck. If you want to get there, just when you leave the church, turn left on Montague Avenue. Go down Rivers, you got your choice. You can go down Sproul Avenue. You can go down King Street. Go down to West Ashley. The far country is anywhere you can go and feel you don't have to be judged for the sinful life you're living. Alexa says, as a matter of fact, people can be sitting in church and their mind could be in the far country. You know the OJ sang that song, your body is here with me, but your mind, come on, help me out, is on the other side of town. The far country, a place you don't have to go to church. You don't have to listen to some loudmouth preacher yelling at you. You don't have to read no Bible. You don't have to touch your neighbor. You don't have to pay your tithes. You don't have to feel guilty for lying, for cheating, for hating. A place where you can sin when you wanna, where you wanna, how long you wanna, with who you wanna, every time you wanna, without being called out. I wonder how many of us have run to places like that, around a crowd where everybody drunk, where they passing the joint, where everybody knows your name. Wear what you want to. And he said he took the money and he went to a far country. Jesus basically saying it's not a distance. The far country is a place in your mind where you can live wrong. And don't have to worry about the Father watching. And then it said while he was there, he wasted his substance in riotous living. He wasted it. The Greek, delving to that word of the Greek of wasted means to unsave it. It's the opposite of saving it. He wasted it. He put no thought into what grandmama said, save for a rainy day. And as long as he had money, the party don't stop. Maybe I'm the only one. Does anybody else here remember the days where you get paid on Friday and be broke by Monday? Look at your neighbor and said, he on the wrong pew now, he messing with me. I remember when I used to get paid when I was a young buck, I was working, making good money. And as soon as I get paid, that's how the devil had that hook in you. You ain't have time to spend home Friday. You got to wash up. See how in a hurry you get. Anytime else, I go home, lay down, watch TV. But when I was young, man, I had that money in my pocket. And, man, I'll wash up and spray up and get my hair right. When I used to wear them big, thick grandmama stockings on your hair to make it lay down. And I'll go out to the club and I have a pocket full of money. And I just got paid. OJ's had a song about that too, but living for the weekend. But I just got paid, and I go in there and spend all my money. I be buying drinks for people I ain't even know. Where you from? Oh, I'm from Beaufort. What you drinking, man? And then come Monday morning, I need gas money to get to work. And I go to my grandmama and say, Grandmama, you got a few dollars I can get? She said, boy, where your money? I said, I don't know. Grandmama said, okay, this is the last time. I know she had some. She'll reach down here and give me $3. That's what the boy was. He wasted it. He wasted it. If you don't save, she used to tell me, put up something, boy, for a rainy day. And I think, well, it ain't raining today. But that's what this boy did. He wasted all he had. And then when it rained, Jesus is telling this story, and people are listening. He said, then when he had spent all, how much is all? All is all. All, everything he got from his father. He wasted it till he was broke. And then Jesus said, a famine came. Like COVID, everybody was laid off. Nobody had money. The party was over. And he began to be in want. He spent all he had. And then he ended up with nothing and nobody. Those are two twins. Nothing and nobody will always be together. When you're down to nothing, you will have nobody. Oh, I know you say, man, that young girl, she like me, man, because I'm sugar daddy. No, you get down to nothing. See that she rubbed that bald head, amen. Nothing will give you nobody. When people get the word out you broke, ain't nobody got time for you. They'll be in church planning to go to Red Lobster. What about her? No, she ain't got nothing, baby. We ain't need that with us right there. Nobody. Can you imagine when he had the money, he had everybody. But now that he's lost it and wasted it with sinful living, and I don't have time to get into it, but Jesus said when he had wasted his substance, that substance is more than money. In other words, that type of living ate up who he really was. The name, the family he came from, the school he graduated from, his integrity, his trustworthiness, his wisdom, his humility, his self-discipline. When you hang with the wrong crowd, birds of a feather, he lost more than money. He lost who he was. Because if you maintain your character, you can get some more money. But when you wasted it all, Jesus said he spent it all. Remember this when you're living fast. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Take some paces with your living. Save for a rainy day. And he went through 2 seasons in that short, I think, 5 verses. He went through the season of somethingness. And then he experienced the season of nothingness. He went through a season where he had a lot of things. And then he came to a season where he had no thing. And I believe that one of the greatest teachers in the University of Life is that professor called Dr. Nothing. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there are some things that you learn when you have nothing. You miss when you have something. When you're down to nothing, you'll really be able to learn who your true friends are. When you're down to nothing, things that you said you don't eat. I wish I had somebody been down to nothing. Huh? When you're down to nothing, cars you said you wouldn't even drive. You were too big for them. You would drive anything that'll crank up. I remember I went through some nothingness in my life. I drive a car now, but I tell you what, God delivered me from thinking a car make you who you are. Because somebody said, Rev, why you still drive that old car? You got a new car. I said, well, I like my old car. It brings back some good memories. Because when you have a car way back years ago, about 20, 25 years ago, a little before that, before I came to Royal, I had one of them cars, could nobody drive it but me. Because I have to give them too many instructions before. Now, if you come to a red light, you got to pump the brakes a couple of times. And when you get out the door, you got to let the window down and reach outside and open up the door. And to get the window up, you got to take these vice grips and stick them down into the window and pull it up. And if you pull it hard enough, it'll stay up. Do I have any witnesses in here? And if you go to the store, you have to take your jumper cables with you in case it don't crank up. Then you have to stop somebody and say, can y'all get a jump off from you? I remember those days, but God got me through those days. But I learned a lot when I didn't have nothing. But you know what I think this little boy went through worse than that? It's one thing to lose what you had. But it's another thing to lose it when you once had it. You know, some people come up, they never really had that much. You know, you learn the struggle. I came up in Alabama, I didn't have that much. I tell you what, I still like a good hog head cheese sandwich every now and then. I learned how to scrape the bottom of the mayonnaise jar and put it on a bread end. Can I get a witness here? And fold it up, and good eating. I didn't even know nothing about no red lobster and shrimp and caviar and all that. Man, give me some butter beans and some fat back and some fried bacon, and I'm gonna eat. But see, when you ain't had that much, you don't miss it. But I think one of the greatest pains of life is when you had it and you blew it. Can I get a witness here? Because you have to go through years of your life saying, if I knew then what I know now. The boy went all the way down. And for a Jewish boy who grew up under the teachings that you should never even be around swine. The swine was a dirty beast. In the Old Testament, the Jews were taught not to be close to the swine or either to a dead body. But here is the boy. The only job he could find was working in a hog pen. He's at the bottom. Not only is he a disgrace to his family, now he's a disgrace to God. He's in a hog pen. And it's in that hog pen he began to think how he had it, but he lost it. Nobody to blame but himself for past mistakes. Remember, you never been there. Maybe you never look back at your life and you blew opportunities. You made bad mistakes. You fell in love with the wrong man or wrong woman. Or maybe both of them. You had opportunities coming out of high school or coming out of college, but you was young and buck wild and you blew them. And it was only later on in life you realize that if I could start all over again, sometimes you think about it. Why was I with that crowd that night? Why was I drinking and driving? And I blew it. Can you imagine those thoughts going through your mind sitting around your new friends? The hogs. How did I end up with the pigs? And the Bible said that he was so hungry that he was about to eat the husk. See, I grew up around hogs too. I didn't live in the pen, but I grew up around them. A hog will eat anything. And that's what sometimes life will have you. You'll be around a crowd that will eat anything. You ever seen an alcoholic with the little brown bag in his hip pocket? I don't know what the crazy wine is around here. I quit drinking wine before I got here. I was saved. But in Alabama, there used to be some wine called Red Dagger. That should tell you something right there. Then they got the Wild Irish Rose. Can I get an amen for the MD 2020? When you hang around that crowd that'll eat anything. See, a corn husk is just a husk. The corn is off. Somebody else got the corn, you just got the leftover. And that's what it is. The alcoholic will sit around and they'll pass that bottle. And pretty soon, it'll come to you. And I was in the Navy. They said, drink it, drink it, drink it. Like it was a man thing to do. Then they would sit around in those rooms and pass the blunt. Y'all ain't amen too much on that. I know the mayor, he ain't chief of police no more. You ain't got to worry. Some of y'all know pass that blunt around. You'll eat anything to soothe your pain and help you forget how you get to the state that you are. Hang around in a car with Other guys up to no good with guns, gang banging, shooting people, robbing people, carjacking. You're in the hog pen with hogs. But it's in that hog pen that this boy with a lifetime of mistakes, I like the way Jesus said this, when he came to himself. That means that when you're living a life away from God, you're not really yourself. Sometimes you got to speak in the mirror and say, I can do better than this. My mama didn't raise me to live like this. I can do better. We need to come to ourselves. He came to himself and he said, my father still got it going on. And here I am with nothing. And he probably sung that song. I use a lot of songs. Song by Otis Redding. I was too blind. I could not see. But now that you left me, I just sit and cry. I cry and cry because you don't miss your water till the well run dry. The boy wanted to sin without the misery that comes with it. He wanted the inheritance of the Father without the Father's oversight. The greatest spiritual law of this physical universe is that this hope can never be realized. Sin will always bring misery. Sin will always bring consequences. That's the part the devil don't want to tell you. He just shows you the fleshly lure. And like a trout in the bottom of the ocean, you bite at the lure, forgetting there's a hook on the inside. And we find sometimes that we're in the hog pens of life. There's a price to pay living without limits. There's a price to pay sneaking and creeping and cheating and lying. Because one day the parties of life will soon be over. The bar will close. The dance floor will lose its appeal. The new generation will be doing dances. You look like a fool out there, still trying to do the bus stop. Your youthful body will soon become controlled by gravity. What you mean, Reverend? What was up will come down. Your firmness will flop. Your stomach, when you tie your belt, your stomach will flow to the path of least resistance. The younger son realized that he could do better. I like that about the boy. I like that about the boy. He said, I will arise and I'll go back to my father. I'll go back to where I was brought up to be. I will be who mama prayed I would be. He said, I will arise. And then Jesus said, he said, I will arise, and he arose. That's the key. A lot of people sitting out here saying, I'm going to change, but don't change. He said, I will arise. See, a lot of people said they would do better, but it's always later on, not today. It's always tomorrow, like those New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to save $100 a week. We say it, but we don't do it. But this boy had some of his daddy in him. He said it, then he did it. See, a lot of us waiting on God and don't realize God is waiting on you. You left him, he never left you. We got to make the first move. What I like about it, Grandmama told me, when you decide to get right with God, if you take one step, he'll take 2 steps. And God's steps are bigger than your step. And that's what brings us to the end of the parable. The best scene in the parable, the journey home. I come to tell you, grace changes everything. Can you see the old boy fresh out the hog pen? Slop, on his clothes, had to sell his shoes to buy bread, barefooted, nasty looking, not a penny of his daddy's money left in his pocket. If you read the parable, he's practicing how he going to reach us that. He said, when I get home, I'm going to say, Daddy, I sinned against heaven. He's just going to confess. You know, when you're ready to confess what you've done, you already delivered from it. He said, I don't deserve to be your child. Just give me a job. Just give me a job. And what was so powerful about that in that culture, when a son would go to the father and demand his inheritance, that inheritance represented the family name. So everything he sold really belonged to the family as long as he was in the family. But when he disavowed the father and asked for it and took it and left the family place and went to the far country, they actually, I read a commentator said, their family would actually have a funeral. For to him, to the family, and to the community, that boy was dead. He was to be disowned. He was no longer to be thought of as a member of the family. His name was removed from the family Torah. The son preserves and provides for the father's mobility. That's what the son is supposed to be there until the father dies. He's supposed to take care of his parents. And then at the death of the parent, then the son would receive the inheritance. But this is done backwards. The father took care of the son. So they had to bury the memory of the son. But now the son is coming home. In the last scene of our theology for dummies, it teaches us something about God that makes me want to shout. Because Jesus, telling this story, he rips the Torah, the Hebrew book, not the Bible, but the Torah which they followed. He rips the traditions of the Torah apart to show us that God's grace changes everything. When Jesus was telling this story, I'm sure the elders of the city was listening to Jesus, and they had in their mind that this father would see that boy and slap him. This father would see this boy and ask him, what are you doing stepping foot on my property? The father would turn his back on the son and give him nothing, because that's what tradition demanded. And that's what the Jews felt, that when somebody mess up like that, the father needs to never give them any more love. But Jesus, in this theology for dummies, said God is not like an earthly father, because the tradition says the boy is forgotten, but grace says the father was still waiting. Oh, can I get a witness here? Because Jesus said the father saw the boy from a long ways off, and I think it wasn't coincidence. I believe that every day the father would stand on the porch and said, I put too much in that boy that he can't come back home. He got my name on him. He got my teachings in him. And every day he would look down the road. Oh my God. The father saw the boy before the boy saw the father. Tradition says that he was lost, but grace said he's found. Tradition says he's blind, but grace says now he sees. Tradition says he's dead, but the father said he's alive. Tradition says he deserves to be left naked and broke, but grace says bring out the best robe. Tradition says leave him shoeless, but grace says put some shoes on his boot. Tradition says let him live on welfare and beg with a cup at the intersection. But grace says put a grain on his finger. Tradition says, kill him. But grace told the father, kiss him. Tradition says, hate that boy. But grace says, hug that child. Tradition says, punish him. But grace says, throw a party for him. And I know I got some people in here that you right now thank God for grace. Anybody glad that God didn't give you what you deserve? But look how clean you look. Got money in your pocket, got a car out in the parking lot. If you really tell the truth about it, you don't deserve what you got. But thank God that when you came to yourself, God saw you coming. Am I right about it? He put clothes on your back. He put money in your pocket. He put gas in your car. He put food on your table. Can anybody except me thank God for another chance? Can you stand to your feet and say, thank God for another chance? Thank God for another chance. Shake a neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, mercy gave the boy a second chance, but grace gave the boy a feast. And I come to tell you, if you come back to God, he'll give you what you left behind. He'll add more to it. If you come to yourself, he'll bless you real good. When I turned my life around, I came to the Lord just as I was, weary, wounded, and sad. I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. Forever, amazing grace will be my song. Because when you look at somebody, look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't look like what I've been through. God's grace put a ring on my finger, put dancing in my feet, put joy in my heart, put a feast in my life, spread at the table, and said, welcome home. Won't he do it for you? Won't he do it? Say yeah! Say yes! Say yes! Say yes! Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved the wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I'm blind, but now I see. And you know the good part, that when you come back to God, he made a promise. He said, I will restore all that the cankerworms and the locusts and the hogs ate from you. In other words, if you come to God, he'll give you back what you lost. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I'm like IBM. I'm in recovery process. I'm going to take back everything that the devil stole. I'm going to take back everything that the devil stole from my granddaddy. I'm going to get it back, everything that the devil stole, because the God I serve has got a lot more in store for you. Amazing grace. Grace changes everything. That's why you can't be hating on people, because you know something on them. They can go back to God, then you be left out in the cold. All you got to do is say, Lord, I'm coming home. The boy didn't even get a chance to say his little speech. He had his little Easter speech. Daddy, I messed up, I sinned. Daddy said, I don't want to hear that. Go get the boy a robe. Let me tell you about them 5 gifts. The first gift was a kiss. The kiss was a signal to everybody, me and him all right. Because you read later, the older brother got mad that the daddy gave it all back to him. But the kiss says, the daddy saying, I'm the owner. And if he all right with me, It don't matter if he be all right with you. That was the kiss. Then he said, put a robe on the boy. Remember, the boy was nasty. He just got out the hog pen. He got slop everywhere. That was his history. What he been showing. And what I like about a robe, those robes go all the way to the floor. And when you put the robe on the boy, he don't look like what he's been through. That's a robe of righteousness. So you see Pastor Holt up here preaching, and some of y'all from the class of 84 look like you preachers. That's what you look like. Because God done put a robe on you. A robe of his righteousness. Then he put shoes on his feet. You can walk a right path. See, in those days, slaves couldn't have shoes. So if you was a slave to liquor or to drugs or to fornication, that's the same thing as a slave. But he put shoes on the boy's feet. And people would look at your feet to see if you was a slave or not. That's why our ancestors used to sing that song. They have to shine the white man's shoes. And then they go back to their little slave quarter, and their children didn't have no shoes, and their wife didn't have no shoes. Because the white man didn't give in South Carolina slaves no shoes because you might go somewhere. But that old black man would look at his family and say, don't y'all worry. When we get to heaven, I got shoes, you got shoes, all God's children got shoes. When we get to heaven, we're going to put on our shoes and walk all around. Then he put the ring on the finger. See, they didn't have credit cards or a cashier's check, but the family ring. Remember, the Pharaoh gave Joseph a ring. The ring meant authority. It meant that whoever wears this ring got money. This boy was broke. But just like that, he put a ring on his finger. He could go shopping. Then that fatted calf. Oh, Lord, that fatted calf. What is a fatted calf? That meant that people that raised animals, sheep and calves and cows, they would take a baby and they would put it in a little stall. They wouldn't let it walk. They wouldn't let it play with the other animals. All they did was feed it. They'll feed it every day. They'll feed it. They'll feed it till it get. And they was fattening it up for the 4th of July cookout. And sometimes they would feed it for months. And I know the servants used to walk around. That's why the older brother got mad. He said, go get that fatted calf. They knew what he was talking about. The one we've been getting fat all year and bring him and cook him. That's how I know the father knew the son was coming back, because he put some aside. One day my boy coming home and he ain't gonna have to beg nobody. That big old fat calf didn't know he was a sacrificed lamb waiting for the lost boy. Somebody here today, amazing grace. Why would anybody turn down the Father's offer? Welcome home. And I don't know who I'm preaching to, but if you're here today and God has touched your heart, I don't care what you've been through, what people think about you, grace changes everything. Grace changes everything. If you come home, God know you're coming when you start walking. I don't care how long you've been gone. I don't care where you've been or who you've been around. But I challenge you, I invite you, come let the Lord have the rest of your life and see, won't he make a difference? Put your hands together, come on. Encourage somebody to make this walk.